Story 1. One time my mom was at the store and she brought home something for herself, my sister, and my dad. 5-year-old me was curious about what she got for me. To make sure I didn't feel left out, she reached into the bag and said, "Oh, I got you this potato masher." For years, before anyone mashed any potatoes, they would come and ask if they could use it. Story 2. I loved the movie Pretty Woman as a child. I asked my mom why people were mean to her, and she explained it was because of her red hair. In the beginning, she wore a blonde wig, and I remember that kids often teased red-headed kids, which made sense. Years later, at 22, my friend expressed a desire to watch it. I was excited, recalling how much I loved it as a kid. As soon as we started the movie, I realized, oh my gosh, she's a prostitute. Story 3. I was allergic to hamsters. My mom told me after I had an allergy test when I was 9. It was not until I was 26 that I realized she disliked rodents and wanted me to stop asking for a pet hamster. Story 4. My mom told us that we can't make noise while baking a cake, or else it will go flat. She baked many cakes. Story 5. When I was very young, we had a pet hamster. He got out of his cage, so my dad put the cage in the basement, thinking he might get hungry and return. One morning, I woke up and found the hamster in his cage in the usual place. I asked my mom how they found him, and she told me she opened the door to the cellar, and there he was, dragging his cage back upstairs. It wasn't until I was a teenager and remembered the exchange that it occurred to me she had obviously made that up. Story 6. If I ran over the cord with the vacuum cleaner, it could suck it up and potentially cause chaos. During a particularly dark time, I decided to go ahead and ran over the vacuum cord. Nothing happened. I tried again. Still nothing. I attempted a different angle. Again, nothing. My disappointment was immediate and immense. I can't believe my most popular post is about the absurdity of a vacuum cleaner. Story 7. My dad, at 79, still won't admit that he was Santa and the Tooth Fairy. I asked him how he did it all, and he just says, "I don't know what you're talking about. That was Santa, son. It wasn't me." Story 8. My cat brought a lizard into the house. It was still alive. I decided to build it a terrarium and nurse it back to health. I did so and then released it back into the wild a few days later. My mom told me that the cat immediately went outside and ate the lizard after I released it when I was 18. She and my dad knew I would be devastated, so they lied by omission and didn't tell me. The way she sat me down to tell me scared me. I thought she was going to share something dreadful. I believed I saved that lizard for years. Story 9. While dating, my husband made a joke about the Chicago Bulls disbanding after their second three-peat. I'm not a big basketball fan, so I thought he was serious. Just being funny, he told me a whole story about it being done because they kept winning and wanted to give other teams a chance, so the players went to other teams. I bought it completely. He was amused, and we went about our lives. From time to time, the Chicago Bulls' 1990s glory would come up as a topic, and I would comment on how awesome it was that they were such good sportsmen that they disbanded to give others a chance. The first time I repeated it, my husband couldn't believe I still thought that was true and found it so amusing that he didn't correct me. Every time it came up, he said it got funnier and funnier, and at one point he decided to see how long it would go on. Fast forward about 8 years later, and I'm at work during the NBA playoffs. Lo and behold, someone says the Bulls are their favorite team. Cue my typical comment. But this time my coworker looked at me and said, "What did you just say?" The jig was up, and I went home and said, "Hey, did you know the Bulls never stopped being a team?" My husband almost wet himself. He was laughing so hard and said, "Someone finally told you?" I'll admit it's pretty funny. Story 10. I went camping with my dad when I was about 6. I noticed a strange smell a few campsites away, and my dad said it was a skunk. Occasionally, I would recognize that smell again and think, "Oh no, a skunk." And then I would move on since we lived in the country. Fast forward to my 19-year-old self wondering why there would be a skunk in my college dorm in the city. It turned out to be marijuana the whole time. Great parenting. Story 11. I always thought it was illegal to watch PG-13 movies before the age of 13. My brother and I came up with this idea on our own, but my mom consistently confirmed this rule. Story 12. That my mom was a redhead. For years, I thought she was a natural redhead. She was 40 when I entered the picture, so I always knew she dyed her hair. I just thought it was to cover up her grays. When I was about 35, my niece clued me in on a family secret. When my mom first spotted my dad at work back in the day, she asked around about him. Someone told her, "He only dates redheads." Mom started dyeing her hair from brown to red, and sure enough, she got the date. Eventually, she got the ring. I never suspected. Photos from the 1950s were either black and white or sepia, and her brown hair looked like it could have been red. But she had 5 kids, and none of us are gingers. It just wasn't something I ever thought about or suspected. And yeah, Dad knows, but he didn't broadcast it to us kids. So I believed that for ages. Story 13. Our uncle died after being kicked by a horse. In reality, he died of cirrhosis in prison after being caught counterfeiting checks. I don't know why they didn't just tell us cirrhosis and leave it at that. We wouldn't have known, as this was before the internet. We thought the horse story was interesting and shared it throughout the neighborhood. All puns intended. Story 14. When I was a child, I had a habit of excessively blinking at strangers. My dad told me that the number of times a person can blink in their lifetime is limited. He said that if I kept blinking on purpose, I would use up my quota of blinks before the end of my life, and I would suffer from not being able to blink. My eyes would dry out completely and I could face serious consequences. Now my habit is subconsciously not blinking for a long time. Thank you, Dad. Story 15. The Easter Rabbi. If you didn't decorate eggs, you would get the Easter Rabbi instead of the Easter Bunny, and you would lose Christmas. Story 16. My mom told me it was illegal to drive with the cabin light on. That was 23 years of frustration. Mom. Story 17. Money does not buy happiness. If I am going to be miserable either way, I would much rather have that money. Story 18. You know the Brenda Lee song Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree? There's a part where she says, "Maybe we'll get some pumpkin pie." And I always thought she said, "Maybe we'll get some pie." My older brother indulged me and said that was allowed on the radio because it was a Christmas classic. I think I was about 12 when I finally figured it out. Story 19. I was about 5 years old when my brother visited from college. When he left, he took a few boxes of cereal with him. When I asked why, he said he was going to check them for food poisoning. I never found out if they were good or not. Story 20. The entire original story of the Mormon Church is fabricated. Story 21. If I went to college and worked hard, I would be successful, get a well-paying job, and be financially secure for life. I have a PhD, and even with a decent job, I am living paycheck to paycheck, feeling like I will never get ahead. I may never own a home, will not be able to retire, and will never be comfortable. Feels like it was all for nothing. Story 22. My family has a very different version of the rummy game. I have been told my entire life that my great-grandparents created it, and it has been passed down through generations. I taught my friends, and we play at least once a week. A friend came by and expressed excitement, saying they loved that game and called it by its name. It feels like my whole life has been based on a misinterpretation. Story 23. Parents always sacrifice for their children's benefit. However, some may not hesitate to prioritize their own interests over their kids. Story 24. Santa was real, and even when I was told he wasn't, I still didn't want to believe it. I feel bad knowing how hard my mom struggled to make sure we had presents, even with little money. She would crochet baby doll clothes for me and go to a dollar store to get many toys. Kids were so different then. I was so excited for those toys. I had no clue they were inexpensive. Story 25. Carrots provide excellent night vision. Even as a child, I was fine with being night blind. I really dislike carrots. Story 26. My mom didn't know how to be nice. She was unintentionally mean and didn't understand how to be otherwise. That was a lie I told myself. I was 36 years old on a Tuesday evening when it hit me. She knew she was being mean. She intentionally said mean things to me. She knew she made me feel bad. I cried hysterically for a solid 45 minutes and went into a full-blown panic attack. I stopped speaking to her for 2 years because of this realization. I was completely devastated and extremely angry. I remember soon after my panic attack, I drove to the store to buy cigarettes. It had been years, and felt ready to fight every person I came across. I decided to just go home. Learning the truth about this lie, that my mother picked at me with hate my whole life intentionally, completely destroyed me. We talk now, but not often. We used to live next door to each other, and I moved 2,000 miles away a year ago. Story 27. If you treat others the way you want to be treated, they will do the same for you. This is the biggest lie I was ever told. Along with the belief that if I'm a nice person, do my best and try harder, everything will be good. It is not good, and none of those sayings matter at all. Story 28. My dad took my childhood dog to the farm so it could herd sheep. I was in my 40s when I learned the truth. The dog had been put down. I really thought he was telling me the truth. Story 29. When I was young and Barack Obama was running for president, I saw the lawn signs that said Obama Biden. I asked my mom what Biden meant, and she said it was someone who supports Obama. For years, I thought Biden referred to a supporter. I didn't know it was a real person. Story 30. It's unbelievable that anyone could be this gullible, but truth is stranger than fiction. I was at a friend's house when I was 11, and we were eating cupcakes. I started to lick the paper wrapping, scraping at it with my teeth to get every crumb. My friend asked me to stop because it was gross. I said no, and that's when she told me the paper had rats in it. I was initially skeptical of this notion, but she went on to spin a story about how her mother, who was a teacher, went on a class trip to the factory where they made the cupcakes. Some of the kids saw a guy pick up a rat and toss it into the machinery, and he told the kids they do it all the time. I don't know why I believe this or why it didn't make me stop eating anything in a supposedly rat-contaminated paper wrapper. There is no logic here, but I never licked a cupcake or muffin wrapper again. For over a decade, this was just something I believed and never questioned. Then one day, when I was about 28 years old, I was eating cupcakes with a friend. She started licking her wrapper, and I said, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." She replied, "Why?" I opened my mouth to say, "Because it has rats in it," and then froze, as my adult brain put on the brakes because obviously, that statement was ridiculous. At that point, I had to explain to my friend what I was about to say and why, and we had a long laugh about how I had believed this for so long. My only defense is that the idea was so ingrained in my mind that I never questioned it until I was about to say it to someone else and realized how silly it sounded. To this day, I don't lick cupcake wrappers, even though I know there's no reason not to. It's just become a habit. Sometimes I wish I knew where my friend from middle school is now so I could share how her lie, which she probably wouldn't even remember making up, affected my entire life. Story 31. All boats have a valve on their bottom that you can open to fill them with water and sink them. I believed this until I was 15 years old, and it came from a fairy tale about pirates. Story 32. The alcohol wipe used before administering a vaccine is not a numbing solution. Nobody misled me about that, but I did say something like, "Thank goodness for this numbing stuff," when I was a child, and no one corrected me. I learned at 17 years old during a blood drive at my school that I was mistaken. Story 33. Joe Paterno and his football program were honorable compared to the dishonorable aspects of other programs. And then, Story 34. Raised in a conservative environment, I believed for many years the misconception that women choose to have abortions in the third trimester for trivial reasons. In reality, third trimester abortions are extremely rare and almost always occur because something has gone terribly and fatally wrong with the pregnancy. Story 35. I believed that the advancement of civil rights and equality was an inevitability that would occur as the older generation passed away. It is disheartening to realize how mistaken I was. Story 36. I have never seen Superman or many classic superhero movies in general, but until a few years ago, I thought kryptonite was good, like it was what made Superman strong. I am 39. Story 37. I believed for a long time that success was all about obtaining a college degree and a high-paying job. However, as I grew older, I realized that true success is about finding balance and happiness in life. A degree and a job can help, but they do not define your worth or happiness. Story 38. From very early on in life, I heard this mantra: cheaters never win, and winners never cheat. In that same vein, hard work pays off. Both are completely false. I have never seen any evidence to support either claim, but I observe example after example of the opposite every day. Interestingly, the same people who told me both of the above also said, life isn't fair. So I guess I should have caught on sooner. Story 39. My dad took me to family video, and I wanted to go to the adult section. I didn't know what was in that back room by the bathrooms. I realized the store was bigger than I thought, and I was genuinely curious about what was back there. He told me I wasn't allowed in because a television show was being filmed back there, and I totally believed it for years. Story 40. Everyone has a soulmate. It's a sweet idea, and I've met a few couples who could be described as soulmates. However, it's also a hurtful lie. Why not tell children that finding love requires effort, just like other pursuits? Story 41. The United States is a unique country. The last few years have shown me that individuals with psychopathic tendencies are in power, regardless of the country. Story 42. There are consequences to our actions in some future life or afterlife. Consequences exist only for the living, not for the dead. Story 43. There was a special chemical in pool water that would reveal if someone urinated in it. As a child, I believed that if I urinated in a swimming pool, a dark blue cloud would form, leading back to my body, which would be very embarrassing. Story 44. The Republican Party aims to lower taxes and reduce regulations because they believe they understand business better than the Democrats. However, it appears they are more willing to accept bribes. Story 45. Not necessarily lies, but 1. My uncle on my father's side is named Craig. For years, until about junior high school, I believed he either owned or ran Craigslist. I was 4 or 5 when I first saw someone with a tattoo. I asked my mother how people got tattoos, and she said they got them by getting hurt. I wondered how people got hurt in such intricate patterns and even letters until I saw a tattoo needle. Story 46. I didn't suffer from migraines while growing up. My mom told me I was just being overdramatic, and I didn't question it. At 18, during a conversation with a friend about headaches, I mentioned, "Don't you hate it when you get a headache and feel nauseous, and your vision gets blurry?" That day, I discovered my experience was not universal. Story 47. I have come to realize that I am not special and that the usual rules apply to me. I spent the last 20 years believing that I could build muscle faster, acquire skills quicker, and that I was smarter and more talented than others. This belief has prevented me from succeeding at any level in my life, leaving me stuck and frustrated with myself repeatedly. Now at 25, I have accepted that I am not special, and this realization is allowing me to start where I am and move forward at my own pace. It will be a long and difficult process, as I still believe I can become a successful music artist. I have invested 10 years of my life into this pursuit, and I do not see any reason to stop. However, I will be starting a career as a train conductor at the end of the month and anticipate dedicating myself to that job for the next few years. I plan to invest all I can into music while working on making my dream come true, no matter the cost. This is what I truly want for myself. I spent so long thinking about what others want that I neglected my own well-being. Essentially, I am starting from ground zero, and the only way to go is up from here. Story 48. I have discovered through reflecting on my past and speaking with family members that I am not as smart as I once thought. Story 49. That I live in a democracy is depressing. I reside in gerrymandered districts and vote in an electoral system where candidates are selected by wealthy donors long before they appear on any ballot. Story 50. The longest lie I believed was that I was not capable of achieving my dreams. It held me back for years until I realized I had the power to shape my own future. Story 51. My parents always told me that only children get watery eyes when drinking fizzy drinks, and I realized a few weeks ago, at 23, that this is not true. Story 52. If you are nice, women will adore you. However, the lie detector test has determined that to be false. Therefore, I am nice because it is the right thing to do. Story 53. The Christian God exists. We are broken and he can heal us. I believed that lie for 21 years, and I am very glad I no longer do. Story 54. I believed that my mother loved me. Turns out she wished I had never been born. It is what it is, I guess. Story 55. If you love someone, you will always agree with them. It took me over 20 years to unlearn the deep dread and fear of sharing an opinion with someone I cared about, especially when they disagreed. I was raised to believe that if you disagree with someone, you should remain silent because it is embarrassing them and talking back. I didn't realize how deeply that fear affected me until I broke down in therapy, believing my boyfriend would leave me because I didn't like the dinner his mother made. As a child, I would have been punished for expressing that feeling. It feels strange to be allowed to say, I'm really not feeling that. I love you, but it's just not for me, without facing instant and serious consequences. Story 56. You can't fake sincerity because sooner or later it reflects in your actions. I have believed it for so long that I feel ashamed to admit it. The takeaway is that sincerity is the easiest of all to fake. You could lose a lot of precious time dissecting and trying to make sense of it, only to realize that most people do things because it is convenient to do so. You can't predict who will definitely be there when you need them the most. Story 57. I had a yellow parakeet named Tweety as a child. She was very friendly, and I would hold her often. One day, I came out to find that she had turned blue. She was also frightened of me. I asked my mom, and she told me that Tweety had escaped from her cage and that my cat had startled her. She said that when parakeets get scared, they turn blue. Oh, okay, that's why she was so frightened. The cat startled her. Years later, I learned that the cat had eaten Tweety, and my dad went to the pet store and got the wrong color replacement bird. Story 58. Truly, without lying and with a little embarrassment, I would say trickle-down economics. I learned about this concept in a high school economics class at age 16, and it wasn't until I turned 30 that I realized it was a misleading idea used to control the masses. Story 59. Growing up, my mom told me on multiple occasions that it is illegal to drive barefoot or to drive with the interior light on. I discovered the truth when I was driving around with 4 of my friends. My buddy in the front seat was breaking up some marijuana and rolling a joint. I didn't smoke at that time, but they were a year older than me and seasoned veterans in the cannabis arts. I usually did not allow them to smoke in my car, but they reassured me that it was completely fine and pointed out that I needed to quit being a little baby. This was apparently a solid point that my 16-year-old self had failed to consider. While we were driving around, I was quietly having a personal crisis. I had a friend next to me taking his time rolling a joint in my passenger seat. I was terrified that my parents would somehow find out, and he was spilling seeds, stems, and marijuana all over my floorboard. Then he turned on the interior light to help him see. My paranoia and anxiety kicked into high gear because everyone knows that it is illegal to drive with the interior light on. That was all I needed to get pulled over, arrested, and sent to prison for the rest of my life. He turned around, performing the task on my middle console while simultaneously talking to the friends in the back seat. I realized he had no intention of turning it off anytime soon, so I went ahead and switched it off for him. Maybe he forgot. He didn't say a word to me, but just switched it back on a few seconds later and went back to rolling the joint. He got sidetracked again, so I turned the light off again. He turned it on, off. Finally, he said, "Dude, what are you doing? I'm trying to do this, and it's dark. I can't see." I calmly told him to hurry up, emphasizing that I was not trying to get pulled over for driving with the light on. They all paused and asked, "Wait, what? Do you think it's illegal to drive with the interior light on?" They proceeded to inform me that I was mistaken. After further conversation and debate on driving laws and regulations, I learned that it is also not illegal to drive barefoot, you foolish baby. They continue to tease me about this, even 20 years later. To this day, I still receive a random jab about it whenever the right moment arises. I truly appreciate those friends. Story 60. I was born with one kidney, And my mom told me it was a common thing. Some people just have one kidney while others have two, similar to how some people have curly hair and others have straight hair, or how some people are tall while others are short. In retrospect, I appreciate her for making sure I felt normal about it. That was good parenting. However, I believed it until I was about 16. Story 61. One time I went fishing with my dad when I was a kid. I was worried about hurting the fish, so he told me that fish didn't feel pain. Fast forward to university biology. We were dissecting fish, and the diagram indicated pain receptors. I was genuinely confused and asked my lab partner, "Wait, I thought fish didn't feel pain?" He looked at me like I was an idiot, and rightly so. Now, my dad denies ever telling me that. Story 62. My grandma told me as a child that she vomited after trying her first cigarette and never tried one again because it made her feel so sick. It was believable because she has a weak stomach. I later discovered that she had smoked for decades but quit before I was born. I'm proud of her for quitting, though. Story 63. I used to like the smell of gasoline at a pump or when filling up the boat as a kid. I commented on how I liked the smell. She told me that she knew someone who liked smelling gasoline, and it got serious to the point where they had to insert a long needle to address the issue it caused. I was about 8 or 9 years old then, and when I would hold my breath at around 19 years old, my girlfriend at the time asked why I was doing that, and I explained my reasoning. Her mother was a nurse and was with us, and she debunked that explanation. Story 64. I broke Venus de Milo's arms off. My dad would show slides of our vacation, featuring me as a 4-year-old standing in front of the statue. He always said I had bumped into it, and that's why the arms were missing. I believed this for far too long while growing up. Story 65. If you work hard and are loyal to a company, they will appreciate and promote you. However, businesses in all sectors often utilize your skills as much as possible for minimal compensation. Do not exceed the work outlined in your contract without appropriate compensation. Story 66. People genuinely cared for each other and made sacrifices for the greater good. The COVID-19 pandemic opened my eyes to many selfish individuals, more than I initially realized. I still feel a bit depressed about it, to be honest. Story 67. If I kiss a guy, they may experience discomfort, and it can be painful for them. They can behave aggressively, and I feel responsible for that. Story 68. When I was a kid, around 12 or 13 years old, I was coming home from school. My dad told me during the car ride that our power had gone out and that the maintenance crew would come to fix it in a week. As an adult, I later found out it was because my family was on the verge of bankruptcy and could not afford most bills. The company shut off the power to our house. However, as a child, I had fun with it. We lit the lanterns we used for camping, took out the board games, played all night, did some homework by candlelight, and enjoyed a fun family night. I have no bad memories from that experience because my family took the opportunity to grow closer. The look in my dad's eyes when he talked about it years later made me sad because he seemed like he felt he let me down. But as an adult, I understand. I would have said the same to my children if I were in that situation. He prioritized my stress and well-being over his by not letting us know about our financial struggles. That man is my hero. As a side note, he is now doing really well for himself. His bankruptcies have fallen off his credit report since this was years ago, and I am really proud of him. He went bankrupt against his will due to family drama. So it's amazing to see him rise after being hit hard. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.